I am very excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Dan Gluesenkamp, who's perfectly equipped to share with us the most important and exciting things to know about California's native plants. So I'm just going to give you a brief rundown of Dan's really interesting and varied background. So Dan's the Executive Director of the California Native Plant Society, and he works with CNPS staff and chapters to celebrate and save California's native flora. Dan earned his PhD at UC Berkeley, studying the ecology of native and invasive thistles. And he previously worked as Executive Director of the CalFlora Database and as Director of Habitat Protection and Restoration for Audubon Canyon Ranch's 30 preserves. He's a co-founder of the California Invasive Plant Council, or CalIPC, and of the Bay Area Early Detection Network. And in 2009, this is really cool, in 2009, he discovered a presumed extinct Franciscan manzanita plant growing on a traffic island at the Golden Gate Bridge, which is just an incredible story. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to you, Dan. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We're really glad you could be a part of this.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this. I really love plant right and sustainable conservation. I'm one of many people who've been paying attention to this group for the many years that you guys have been working to just come up with some really smart, affirmative, kind of logic-based solutions, bringing together partners and bringing together volunteers like the folks who will be doing these surveys to just work together to get the worst of the bad stuff off the shelves and make California a better place. So thank you.
You're very welcome. We couldn't do it without you, Dan.
So hopefully I'm sharing the screen now. Are you seeing a photo of a kid in flowers?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I come from California Native Plant Society, so I have a bias regarding how important California native plants are. And with regard to what you guys are doing, and by you guys I mean the folks on this call who hopefully will be participating in the surveys, collecting very important data that can be used to refine this project. There's a couple points that I want to make with regard to native plants that are important to you. One is that California is blessed with an amazing diversity of native plants, and there's something very special. And when you are working to save California's native flora, you're doing something that is globally important. And then the second is that the diversity of that flora, the breadth of California, the different habitat conditions, it's really served as an amazing nursery to give us a huge number of different plant types that we can use to grow in lieu of invasive non-native plants. To make California a more beautiful and healthier place. So let me see if I can advance this screen. So I work for the California Native Plant Society. I love the group. Focused on native plants. And CNPS really has kind of, there's three main parts to its mission. We want to know the flora. And so I'm going to talk a little bit today to kind of bring you up to where I am as far as my understanding of the California flora and hopefully help you appreciate how special it is. We work to save the flora and all of California's native plants and the special places in which they occur. And when we're a little bit too late to save them, we work to fix it. And that's where a lot of the gardening that we do comes in. And that's really the future. Over the next century, we're going to be done saving California. We'll save what is savable, and then we'll have to get to work fixing those places that we were unable to save and that we lost. And gardening is really going forward over the coming decades and centuries. Gardening is going to give us an amazing amount of tools that we can use to help our wildlife and our flora. So just to go back in time a little bit, to give you kind of some of the big picture, this is planet Earth about 250, 230 million years ago. Earth had one continent, Pangaea, and really just kind of one continent's worth of biodiversity. So it was a very nice planet, wonderful, wish there were more like it in our solar system. But it was nothing like what we have today, because in the ensuing millennia, or megallennia, we've been blessed by tectonic drift pulling apart the continents and creating a planet with essentially 5 different zoogeographic realms. This map shows you Wallace's zoogeographic realms. Really, each one is kind of almost a different planet, where evolution has followed a different story and given us a different set of solutions, different set of organisms evolved to do similar things in different places. And so this is a very diverse planet. It's a wonderful place, and California has a special role in it. California is, we're all lucky to be in California, or maybe it's not luck, maybe we chose it, because of its geography. We're on the edge of one plate, scraping up against another. And that has caused, that's really given California some really interesting structures. So this shows because we are on the western edge of a continent, we are one of Earth's 5 Mediterranean zones. And that's kind of, one of the factors that gives us great diversity. So bam, right there you got a bunch of bonus points for being in a Mediterranean zone. You're going to have a lot more species than places that are more interior or in different positions on the continents. Mediterranean zone is a place that has Mediterranean climate, summer dry, winter wet. And as someone who grew up in California, that's just the way things are. But I understand there's other parts of the world where it rains in the summer. Weird as that may seem. And that's not a recipe for great diversity. Being in a Mediterranean climate really is. And we're one of those Mediterranean zones that has great mountains to the north. And so has, by virtue of a pumping factor that occurs during climatic change, when climate warms, we have plants moving down from we have plants moving up from the south. And so we'll have kind of a more Mexican flora, a madro-tertiary flora moving north during times of warming. And then as the planet cools, that northern flora will move south. And each time a flora moves down and then retreats back, it leaves some of itself behind it. And so each time the flora kind of washes over California, it adds more taxa and more plant diversity and more wonderfulness. Because of those plates scraping against each other, we also have mountains and hills everywhere you look. There's a lot of other places that are a lot flatter. Believe me, I just moved from Sacramento, and I can tell you. But California is blessed with really just fantastic topographic relief. And that means that we have an uncountable number of north-facing hillsides that something can escape from the heat, or south-facing wet seeps where a special kind of plant can occur. This topographic diversity is another factor that generates biodiversity, and is another reason we have an amazingly rich flora here in California. And then, we also have geologic diversity. Every time you lift up a mountain, or you squish something, or you expose a new mineral type, you create a different kind of soil type, and we have plants that are adapting to different soil types. So in California, it seems like almost every acre has a different soil type, and over time that selects for a different type of plant. So that's another factor that pumps up the biodiversity. And so this is what you wind up with. You wind up with a state with an amazing number of different plant types, and with really high rates of rarity. We have at least 7,000 different plant types in California, and more than a third of those are rare. That doesn't mean that they're all in danger of going extinct or anything. Many of them have been rare since they evolved. They may only occur in one hill or one mountain or one valley. And it's part of the recipe for having a wonderfully diverse state. And so here's putting it in a little bit of context. California is one of 34 biodiversity hotspots in North America. And so, just to let you know, when you're out there doing the surveys, collecting data to protect California wildlands, you're not just saving your place, that's obviously important. We all care about the place we live, but we're lucky that we live in a place that the whole world should care about. So you're doing everyone a favor when you do this work. And it gives us some really wonderful plants that we just love. It also gives us iconic landscapes and iconic plants that people come from all over the world to come see. As you guys all know, everyone in the world, I'm sorry, I'm being hyperbolic. Many people on planet Earth can recognize a Joshua tree, not just because of the U2 album. Giant sequoias and redwoods of California are famous around the world, and people come from all over to see these amazing plants. And then, of course, the California poppy. So these are just some of the iconic plants and iconic landscapes that we're lucky enough to have, and that we're lucky enough to have you working to protect. So, of course, there are some problems. There's trouble in paradise, always. And in this case, a lot of these correlates of biodiversity also give us very pleasant climates, very nice places to live, beautiful hills upon which you can see a great view, and draw people. And people are wonderful. We all love them. They give us fantastic culture. God bless people. But when you got a lot of people, you got a lot of parking lots and a lot of roads and a lot of concrete and a lot of invasive plants being introduced. All of those are things that correlate positively with population size. So human population is really the #1 factor predicting a lot of the impacts. The number one impact to the flora is habitat loss due to development. This is a painting of Mount Tam. When I found it in a junk shop in San Francisco a decade ago, scribbled on the back of the painting, it said, "Poppies on Mount Tam." It was painted in 1934, 3 years before the Golden Gate Bridge was completed. When if you wanted to paint a picture of poppies on Mount Tam, you had to take a boat across and take a carriage or a horse or something like that, set up your easel, try and get back before dinner time or the fog. This is the same location 5 years ago. So as you can see, we've lost a lot of habitat. And this makes it more important for us to really be careful about what we're doing and work conscientiously to do the right thing. So this is another view of habitat loss in the Bay Area. And that gray that you see, that's not false coloring on the satellite photo. That is the color of the landscape when you look at it from space. That gray is our built environment. And it's not all concrete. It shows up that way when you look like this. But if you zoom in closer, you all know a lot of that is gardens. A lot of it is landscaping. And much, much more of it is kind of abandoned landscaping or abandoned gardens that have been taken over by weeds. And so this is the area in which we are focusing with this work. We are looking at the plants that people are planting in this built landscape and that are in many cases spreading. And so this is something that we know is happening. We know there can be negative impacts or there can be positive benefits. And Plant Right and this effort that we're all part of right now is really the beginning of an effort to be conscious about our built landscape and our planted landscape, and to amend some of the small wrongs of the past, and more importantly, come up with a new plan for the future so that we can have a landscape which is diverse, which is full of pollinators, which sings with the songs of amazing birds, which has a diversity of flowers all times of year, and isn't just dominated by one or two weedy plants that no one really loves. So, not that nobody loves French broom, but we tend to have too much of it. So this is what happens when you bring an ornamental plant in without careful testing. You select the plant because it's very easy to grow. You can just toss a couple seeds in a pot and grow it up and sell it real fast. It's a great ornamental plant that was really done in the old days, before we knew of some of the perils and before we had the good science that we have and the good techniques that are being applied to assembling the Plant Right list. French broom would not make it on the list today. It was brought in, and now it has spread widely, and now a lot of us are out there pulling it. That's the kind of thing we want to prevent. Likewise, helichrysum, licorice plant on Mount Tam. Incidentally, a lot of climate change models show Mount Tam to be an important refugium in the future, a mountain on which a lot of plants that will be driven out of their existing climatic space can find refuge on Mount Tam, closer to the cool ocean, a little bit higher elevation. Unfortunately, much of it is being covered by plants like this escaped horticulture plant, this escaped licorice plant, and leaving very little space for these things to find refuge in a time of change. So these are the things that, this is what stimulates us to act. And then, quite honestly, this is also what stimulates us to act. The landscapes that we see around our houses when we walk down the street, places that are just kind of wasted opportunities. In many cases, they're doing just fine. The lawn is fine, but these days it uses a fair bit of water, and folks are looking to kill it. In too many cases, the planted landscapes have just been invaded by weeds and really are doing nobody good. And so this is an example of the alternative that we have. This is what we're working on with California Native Plant Society, and I would encourage you to dig into the resources we provide to help people learn to plant alternatives, not just native plants, but non-invasive, non-native plants that benefit wildlife, save water, and don't require chemicals. So this is a montage, a collage of different native plant gardens and some of the wildlife that love them. And this is kind of our vision for the future, a landscape in which we have planted the plants that we love, that we know will sustain and support pollinators and butterflies and songbirds and our spirits, and that we have tended to create the kind of world in which we want to live. And so that's what we're working on here. So what do we do about that? Some of the resources that you have, as you go out and do surveys, you just need to be aware of these so that if you have a teaching moment, you have the information available, and so that you understand what the retailers that we're talking with are, part of the solution. The resources that we have for building this healthier environment in our urban landscapes are garden tours. We do a lot of garden tours around the state, and over the next couple of weeks, you're going to see garden tours in every part of California. These are native plant garden tours that CNPS hosts where folks can come and get inspired. They can come and see each other's gardens and see what's growing well and think about what they want in their garden, chat with neighbors and that kind of stuff. We've also got plant sales, so that once you're inspired, you can go out and you can buy those plants, those native plants that have evolved in California, that for millions of years have grown without water, without being watered, without being fertilized, without chemicals and pesticide being added. Plants that know how to live in California, and I would like to say are ones that we should first consider when we're trying to decide what to plant. So this is a plant sale at the Brazil Room in Tilden. The first plant sale of the Native Plant Society. Back when they formed, they needed to raise a little bit of money for scholarships, so they held a plant sale. And today, plant sales are still a mainstay of CNPS chapters. So if you need a plant sale, you can go to cnps.org or to your chapter website, and there's plant sales all over the place, as well as local nurseries. We also provide workshops and trainings and symposia to teach people techniques for designing their gardens, for installing and planting their gardens, and for maintaining the gardens. This is a flyer for a workshop we taught with our Baja chapter a short while back, one of our most active chapters, and really, fortunately, the chapter is growing at a rate that is almost as fast as the habitat development in Baja. And then for folks who don't really want to do it themselves, who just want to hire an expert to do it, we've got a certification program for landscaping professionals that will give them the tools that they need to be able to design, install, and maintain good native plant gardens. And more, will allow those who know how to do it to show that they know. We'll provide a certificate that they can present to prove that they know what they're doing. There's a lot of fly-by-night types out there who will say, oh yeah, I can plant a native plant garden, no problem. What can't be too much to it. And there isn't that much to it, but there's a little bit. So certification. And then, you know, probably the most valuable resource I think that we're providing right now across California with partners is a CalScape website that allows you to type in your address, your street name, your zip code, any kind of location. And it'll give you a list of the native plants that grow there naturally. It sorts them by those that are the hardiest and the best for gardening. You can build a little My Plants list as you poke through and you decide what you want to plant based on what pollinators go for it, or how you like the flowers, or how long it blooms. And then tell you what nurseries in your area sell the plant and allow you to get it from them. It'll also help you find those experts who have gotten certified and can verify that, yes, they know how to help you with your garden. So CalScape's a great resource that's growing, and if you have ideas and anything to contribute, it's yours. And then, of course, we've got signs that folks can stick in their garden so that they can be ambassadors and prompt their neighbors and passerbys to say, what's that all about? And get the fire hose of information that you and others will be able to provide. So, you know, a lot of this involves public outreach, helping those folks who say, you know, I killed my lawn, now what? Helping them understand what the alternatives are. And there's a lot of kind of high-profile projects going on. When I was asked to speak here today, I was asked to speak about California native plants in a time of drought. And I think that really connects with what you guys are doing. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about, you know, California native plants in a time of drought, and the solution that we have on hand. But first I want to talk about, you know, we've got a bunch of high-profile projects going on. This one that I'm going to talk about right now is re-landscaping of the California State Capitol. The State Capitol building is in the middle of a really beautiful park. A lot of giant trees, fantastic place. And it's got some gardens that surround it, planter beds and lawns and other gardens that are viewed by many millions of people every year, including all the legislators and all of their staffers, the people who are out there making decisions on our behalf. And it's been a little bit of a lost opportunity. For the last couple years, due to the drought, a lot of the landscaping was killed. They're trying not to kill the big, beautiful old specimen trees, but the planter beds, they turned off the irrigation, allowed them to dry out, and started making plans about, you know, replacing the old high water use plants with something that made a little bit more sense in this time. And so they reached out to CNPS and asked us to get involved, and we got to work designing new landscapes for them. And now we're coming very close. We've been going through the design phase, working with others, and setting up a really nice set of demonstration gardens that the millions of folks visiting the Capitol, and most importantly, the thousands of staffers and legislators waiting in line for the metal detector, will be able to walk past these gardens, see the signage, and learn a little bit about some of the solutions that we have out there for making California beautiful again. So here's the planter beds that were killed when they turned off the water, and here's just one of the conceptual designs this is one of the early designs. We've actually settled on some different ones, more precise. But, there you go, basic idea. That's the Capitol Lawn project. So as far as California native plants in a time of drought and the solutions that we have on hand, first want to reiterate that we are in a drought, but it doesn't really matter. I believe that there is definitely enough water in California for us all to live quite happily. We need to eat a few less almonds and maybe grow a little bit less alfalfa. I think we've really shown over the last 3 years in that last little bit of a drought that it doesn't really take too much for us to adjust to long-term dry conditions. That was a nice little dry run that we had. We saved a ton of water, and we all realized that these lawns that we have that aren't really doing anyone any good, that are sucking up a lot of water, that it's really not that hard to get rid of them and replace them with wildlife-friendly, drought-tolerant, low chemical use native plant landscaping or other plant landscaping. And so there's a lot of solutions. But just to roll it back, we also need to keep in mind that 85% of the water, 15% of the water in California, 15% is used by urban and residential. 85% is used by agriculture. And as you see on this map, the vast majority of that is used by just a couple water districts, just a handful of individuals who pull water rights down into not even Southern California, but the southern San Joaquin Valley. And so that's really where our water use is. However, it's still important for all of us in the urban areas to reduce our use, and landscaping is a big part of that use. And so in response to that, we've put together a whole bunch of toolkits and a lot of instructional material to help people make that transition. And it's amazing the response that we've seen. It has helped me to realize that a lot of Californians are looking for an excuse to kill their lawn. I think a lot of us understand that. We're a little bit tired of lawns. Not many of them get mowed. They're all pretty weedy. I think we've just been looking for someone to command us to kill them, because a lot of people are coming to us saying, I killed my lawn, now what? And so I'm going to run through a few of the elements of a workshop that we've been presenting. We've presented this 9 times in the last few months across California, including especially disadvantaged communities in the Central Valley that don't always have access to this kind of information. And it's really our Ditch Our Lawn workshop series. So happy to give you more information on this. You can just get in touch anytime with me or with Caroline Garland, our horticulture coordinator. And basically it helps people to understand the advantages of gardening with native plants. There's an amazing palette that we have available for planting. The plants are very beautiful. There's also some reasons to start gardening with native plants and stop gardening with invasive plants and lawns. The natives have, for the most part, they have evolved here over millennia and millions of years. They know how to grow in California without a lot of maintenance and a lot of human care. If you pick the right plant, they don't need a lot of additional water. They certainly don't need a lot of nutrient input. In many cases, fertilizing them is counterproductive. You're just going to feed the weeds. They don't need a lot of chemical addition. They're really ideal in many respects as an alternative to the things that you don't want to plant. They also are fantastic for reducing water use. Well, I think I made that point saying that they don't need a lot of water. But we've really got a great palette for low water use plants, and they actually use less water than most of the WUCOLS plants. Most of the drought-tolerant plants that people are planting actually use more water than do the California natives, which is somewhat to be expected. What's going to use less water than the plant that grew here for 1 million years without any additional water? But then many of us grow California native plants not because the other plants are bad, but because California native plants do something that the others never can. They support native pollinators that we all are increasingly concerned about. They support native bees, which are amazingly diverse and amazingly efficient and robust pollinators in a time of pollinator decline. And they support a great diversity of butterflies that light up our lives. And so in addition to supporting wildlife like birds and all the other good stuff, there's very good science behind it, behind my statement that when you add a few California native plants to a garden, you greatly increase the abundance and diversity of the pollinators in that garden. It doesn't have to be a native plant garden. It needs to be a garden with some native plants. So just take that home with you. So here's some of our happy, satisfied customers. And so I think I've kind of gone through some of these benefits of California native plant gardening. Although lower maintenance is mine. I find it very easy to kill my lawn and install a few native plants and just kind of let them go wild. Some people like a more manicured garden, but I like the wild thing. So the workshop that we teach goes through the main steps in helping people to figure out what to do after they've killed their lawn. We talk about designing the garden and coming up with a plan, including relief. We talk about plant selection, and we emphasize using CalScape, which really is a great tool for selecting native plants and then finding the nursery near you that grows them. And CalScape also can help you identify kind of the regional all-stars that are great for your specific situation. And provide you plant profiles so that you can find plants that do special things or have special bloom periods or have other information about them. The workshop goes through the fundamentals of installing the native plant garden, which is, as you can imagine, is fairly separate from designing it and planning it. How to pick the healthy plants, how to locate them, and it goes through the fundamentals of maintenance, which is far too often is forgotten with regard to native plant gardens. A lot of us will install a garden and figure that it'll just sustain itself, and they can be much easier to maintain than many gardens, but they still require a little bit of work. And depending on your plant selection, if you pick fast-growing plants, then you're going to need more maintenance. And so we go over maintaining your garden as well, trade-offs in mulching, how to maintain a garden for low water use or maintain a garden that emphasizes pollinators, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, we're not expecting everyone to have kind of a wild-looking native plant garden. Although it's my personal preference. The science on native plant gardening, the art and science of this stuff is well developed. 40 years ago, when we really started this revolution, it wasn't. Today, we have a huge industry of folks who have come up with beautiful designs, beautiful inspirations, and we want to share some of those with folks. And so these are just a few of the slides that are in that workshop. We've got a lot more information, and I encourage you to get in touch if you think this is going to be helpful for you in your outreach work, especially as you're visiting nurseries and talking to folks. So here's some more design inspirations just to show some of the different things. And this is really what we're getting at. We're looking for Californians to plant gardens that do not include harmful invasive plants, that are gardens that are going to support wild pollinators and that are going to really be a net plus in our landscape, and yet still be beautiful and really inspire us and help us realize that we can make things better. So that's what we're trying to do with all this stuff. The work that you guys are doing is really important. A few years ago, I don't know if it was a decade ago, when sustainable conservation got plant rights started, I was active with California Invasive Plant Council, and I was doing a lot of habitat restoration work across Marin and Sonoma and San Francisco and the East Bay. And we were all pretty unhappy because we'd go out, we'd spend our Saturday doing invasive plant removal, maybe pulling French broom out of Audubon Canyon Ranch or rolling up ice plant at Fort Funston, dealing with these invasive horticultural plants that had gotten away. And then, we'd spend our whole day working really hard, having a great time, saving nature, building camaraderie, and then we'd drive home, maybe stop at a nursery or a grocery store on the way, and we'd see the same darn plants for sale. And it didn't happen all the time, but when it happened, it's really dispiriting. And it was really discouraging. And it wasn't really clear what we could do about it until Plant Right started with a really novel formula, not of beating people over the head with a stick, but of really teaming up with industry, with the folks who love growing plants and love making the world green, and understanding what drives them and what they're looking for and what they need to keep in business, and working with them to find those plants that really were the best solutions and to identify those that really weren't doing anyone a lot of good and were doing a fair bit of harm. And just over time, build that trust and build a system that really has made a huge difference. Those plants that we would go out and weed, they're no longer for sale. There's a few in the nurseries, and you're going to find a few. But as the data from the surveys show, they've been declining over time, and it's because of this project. The data that you collect shows the outcome of this work. It helps to understand how effective it's been. It helps to fine-tune the project so that we can do better over time. But it also just kind of demonstrates how this approach can make a big difference and it inspires a lot of others to take a more collaborative approach towards coming up with shared solutions to these things. So I just want to encourage you to follow through, to make a commitment, and get out to those nurseries and have some good conversations with these good folks. Talk to, well, I don't need to give you instructions on the nursery surveys. You're going to get that. But I just do want to thank you for being involved in this, for being a part of this solution, and ask you to get in touch if you have any questions for me, or I can provide any more information on the native plant side of the equation. So this is fundamentally, this is what we want to save, and what we want California to have. You know, we want a lot of California to look this beautiful in the next 100 years. Thank you.